Welcome along to another edition of the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. It's week 9, folks. Can you imagine? We're over the halfway mark. And to help you make some value bets are three men who are back on the winning trail last week. If you're watching us now on our social media channels, top left of your screen, you can see Adam Chernoff, the bottom left, the Professor, Brad Allen, and Drew Dinsick at the bottom right. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's get your quick takes from week 8. Adam Chernoff. Tough one with the total in Houston.
Yeah, got on the wrong side of 51. That game had a number of ways it probably could have got over the total and happened to fall the one way late in the game that it really couldn't have gone. So tough one. But it was another week where market movement didn't really equate to success. So interesting to see now it's 7 of 8 weeks this season where that's really been the case. So some interesting moves continue to get beat down pretty badly in the games as they take place.
Yeah, maybe with the market movement, but we had 7 picks locked in last week, 5 winners. Very unlucky with that one. Prof, let's be honest though, the total in San Francisco, not so good. But you were kind of fit. You were liking the 49ers in that one.
Yeah, I mean, I gave out under 42, I think, on the podcast and in the blog, and it might have closed 40.5. It was getting bet down. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think many people expected San Fran to go off for 50 on their own. They kept the Panthers in check as expected, but they just went nuts, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Drew Dinsick, how was it for you?
It was a fair week. If that 51-yard field goal from Adam Vinatieri doesn't go through the uprights, I think I'm doing a jig. But it wasn't meant to be. And in fact, if the refs called what was an obvious holding in the end zone, that was very clear safety for the Denver Broncos. That's really how that game should have ended. And in general, the reffing has been
tough call, and that Bucs Titans game was a bad call as well.
Yeah,
you on the bad side of that one?
That sent me west, Sully.
I think.
What? You've literally got one job. They've literally been told, don't blow the whistle if it's in out. And what are you doing? Anyway.
They don't listen. Guys, before we move on to this week's game, I've got one question from our Twitter audience. Thanks for getting in touch, guys. We can't get through all of these, but one question from Scott Forrest. Which team with a winning record is currently the biggest frauds? He suggests Buffalo. Drew Dinsick, I'll start with you first. Who are the biggest frauds?
Well, I mean, it's obviously the Patriots. There's no way. I'm just kidding. The Patriots are deservedly incredible. I'll go off the beaten record here, off the kind of the normal standard answers here. I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks at 6-2 have the potential to really be a good bet against over the next handful of weeks. They're entering the part of their season where their schedule is going to tick up. They're going to play some significantly harder competition. This could get real interesting as obviously they have one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the league in Russell Wilson, but a coaching staff that is putting together pretty poor game plans. And I think we're going to see the Seahawks come back to earth here over the next handful of weeks.
Adam Chernoff, you seem to be in agreement there on the Seahawks.
Yeah, definitely the case. You look at what they faced so far, the 6th easiest schedule of efficiency, both offense and defense. And the reliance they've had on Russell Wilson was enormous. Now they're going into the final half of their schedule, the second most difficult overall schedule. So that's likely a downturn for them as we go forward.
Brad Allen, what are you thinking most overrated team in the NFL so far this season?
I think Scott's nailed it with Buffalo. I think they've had an easy ride on defense. They've faced, I think, the 3rd easiest schedule. And then on offense, they're just abysmal. Anyway, no matter who they faced, I think ESPN's FPI metric has them 25th best in the NFL. Football Outsiders has them 25th as well. I think they're 14th.
Hey, guys, we skirted around the last week. Hands up who backed the Eagles against those Bills last week. Come on, hands in the air. I know who you are. We stuck with them, finally. Small bit of faith. Our prayers were answered. Thankfully, it was due. Right, guys, obviously you guys know that we have Akkas at Matchbook. One person in particular clicked a 10-timer last week. Now, in their defense, they were all money line, but they backed the Saints, the Rams, the Colts. Very lucky with the Colts. The Lions, the Jags, the 49ers, the Patriots, the Texans, Packers, Steelers. I can't tell you how much they won. But we're looking roughly, I think it was about 12 or 13 to 1 shot. All very short, but it just goes to show there was a lot of really comfortable wins there outside of the Colts. So you can get your Akkas now on Matchbook. You're sitting down watching Red Zone on a Sunday. get involved. It is no better sporting entertainment having an ACCA and watching Red Zone. Right, gentlemen, let's move on to this week's games, and we have some crackers to get through. We will start on Sunday night. The New England Patriots at the Baltimore Ravens. Current betting at Matchbook, the Pats are a 1.59 favorite on the money line on the road in Baltimore, 2.68 the Ravens. The current point spread at Matchbook, Baltimore Ravens getting 3 points there, and you can back that at odds against 2.09, and the total is 45.5. Professor, the total, let's talk about that first. Open at 46.5, it's been bet down to 49.5. Can you see the move, and are you on it?
I backed the under. I got a terrible number. I backed under 44.5, and it's gone back up here. So I'm trying to get a bit more matched at 45.5 because, so defensively, let's start with the Patriots defense, shall we? Because I've been banging on about this for over a year, that defensive metrics are a function of who you face. And for the Patriots come in here, everyone's saying they're the best team since the 85 Bears, and they have faced Ben Roethlisberger, possibly hobbled, Ryan Fitzmagic, Josh Rosen, doesn't even play anymore, Luke Falk doesn't play anymore, Josh Allen, discussed how bad he is, Matt Barkley, Colt McCoy, Sam Darnold, and then Baker Mayfield.
They're all good college quarterbacks, not really good pro quarterbacks. They're all good in college.
They're like 70% backup quarterbacks there. And so, of course they look great. Well done. They're a good defense, but they're not. They've not faced anyone like Lamar Jackson with an extra week to prepare. And I think that's the other crucial thing here, that there's not for once a massive coaching mismatch. I mean, last week, the Sharps, again, they got caught up with the Browns, bombed them in from 13 to, they went off 9.5. That takes huge money to move an NFL line 4 points. And then they turn it over 3 times in the first quarter because it's Freddie Kitchens and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's up against the greatest defensive mind ever. Well, this week, John Harbaugh, I think he's a top 3 coach. He listens to his analytics teams. They craft game plans that actually are specific to the opponent. I remember when they played the Chiefs, he was going from 4th down, he was going for 2, and he was like, yeah, that's what we needed to do to beat the Chiefs because we know they're going to score 30 points against them. And so they craft the game plan. So I have a lot of faith that for once the Patriots aren't going to outcoach the opponent here. And I just don't think they're that good. So the defense, as I say, is not as good as it looks. And then offensively, they've been bang average this year. They are 15th in offensive DVOA. The offensive line has struggled. The receivers aren't good. That's why they keep trying to trade for them. And then Baltimore is 7th in offensive DVOA. So we've got the better offense. The defenses aren't as different as they look. And then the line with the bye built in suggests that the Patriots are about 7 points better here. And I'm just not buying.
Cleveland ran for a lot of yards too last week, Prof. And then Nick Chubb made a kind of a mess of a kind of full of fumbles. Drew Dinsick, what are you thinking here? I'm just trying to think back to your deep dive pod on Monday. I think you're kind of favouring the Patriots.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what exactly happened that made a look ahead of Patriots -6.5 turn into an open of Patriots -4, turn into bet down to almost Patriots -3. It's an awful lot of clear and obvious books positioning themselves to be on the side of the Ravens. Take that for what it's worth. That apparently, that they apparently have, staked this position out. They are welcoming all of the Patriots money that they want. This is obviously, this is the Sunday nighter. It's going to get incredible amount of attention, incredible amount of activity on the day of from the recreational players. And I can't imagine very many of them are going to be backing Baltimore at this low of a price. And I personally thought to myself, okay, you have Bill Belichick, who is coordinating one of the most spectacular defensive performances of any team that we've seen in professional football in the last 20 years. He's going up against a young quarterback. He has the ability to give him multiple looks. He's got the exact personnel in his defensive backfield to do exactly what the Chargers did to Lamar Jackson in the playoffs last year against the Ravens. And I would expect he rolls out that kind of a look here. And so, and all that said, you still have issues with, the Patriots offensive line isn't clicking. The Patriots receivers aren't really having good chemistry with Tom Brady. Patriots kicking game is a disaster. All of this really spells, a very tightly contested game. Both teams potentially playing field position. They're going to have to bust out some crazy fluky plays, which we know the Ravens will have those up their sleeves. We expect the Patriots will have some of those. Those will probably be whoever kind of makes the wild plays is probably that's the defining factor in who wins the game. But either way, I think under is a very solid look in this one. I don't know why it's ticking back up to 45. I would take it under, probably down to about 43.5 realistically. And I think this is a game that's probably decided in the later minutes by whoever has the ball last, and it's going to be, it's going to be whoever makes the key defensive stop.
Okay, bit of a consensus there for the under. I think both guys are leaning on different sides of the point spread. Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking on this one?
I think it's a tough game to bet from the side perspective. I entirely get the move down for Baltimore, right? Like this is numbers and on-field analysis 100% all of the way. And I think our friend of ours, Rob, collectively summed it up in a really good tweet that was somewhat controversial. Said, imagine how good the Patriots would be if they had a quarterback. And that might sound a bit offensive and looking for bait, but let's be honest, the Patriots have won 3 games this year with the yards per play below 4.8. That does not win you games in the NFL. But you look at their schedule, half of their games have come against teams ranked 30th, 31st, or 32nd in offensive efficiency. They haven't faced an opponent that ranks higher than 22nd. Now it's a step up to Baltimore, who's 6th in that regard, and they're the number 1 team down to down in rushing success rate. Wherever the Patriots showed a bit of a weakness defensively, it's stopping the run. We saw Nick Chubb and the Cleveland Browns, despite their inability to hold on to the football, able to exploit that with an offensive line that's been fairly average, if not below average, for much of the year. And now the Baltimore Ravens with their offensive line, a significant step up. And it all comes down to their identity, right? Baltimore wants to run the football. This is something we've seen increase the last 4 weeks overall. And they've increased their explosive rushing ability as well, ranking 5th in the NFL, so they can go for big plays too. So I think the game plan's pretty simple for Baltimore, but then again, you get the New England Patriots who, they do one thing well, it's limit what their opponent wants to do and where they're most comfortable. So you look at what they can do naturally, it's going to be about stopping the run, it's going to be about discipline within those gaps, eliminating the mobile quarterback, which is something they've done fantastically the last couple of seasons. So it becomes a spot where if this gets down to 3, despite the Patriots' inability to move the football consistently on offense, this is potentially a number that gets a little bit too low to really get involved with the Baltimore Ravens. So I get the move, but if this hits 3, I mean, that's awfully, awfully short despite how this game matches up.
Yeah, it seems to be trending that way. Now, obviously, with the time of recording, we're looking at Pats -3 at 1.87, the Ravens +3 at 2.09, but it seems to be trending that direction. Anyway, Brad Allen, you wanted to come back in on this one before we moved off it. And you muted yourself, sir. I love this episode of Brad Allen muting himself. Go on, sir.
What a moron. I was going to say the Ravens' health. They're going to have Jimmy Smith back in the secondary, and then they're going to have Hollywood Brown on the outside. So they're pretty much fully healthy. And then just defensively, they've been trending up a little bit. They've had the pieces, but they haven't been very good. So they start through September. They were pretty terrible. They were They were 30th in defensive DVOA through September, but they're a 6th in the NFL through October. So they look to be trending upwards.
Yeah, and I suggest that we will see a whole lot of running the ball from the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram, whoever they can get to run the ball, and that will help an underplay. So I think we're going to lock in under 45.5. Prof, I know you were on 44.5, but you wait around, you're getting a better number. Who knows? It might get a 46.5. Probably doubt it. Let's move on to one of Sunday's earlier games. There's Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Seattle Seahawks. Current betting here at Matchbook on the money line, you can back the Bucs at 3.4. Seattle Seahawks at 1.41. Current handicap right now at Matchbook are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting a 6-point start, back that at 1.98. Seattle -6 at 2. Oh my God, how tight is that margin? Unbelievable. 51 is the total, slightly favoring the under. Adam Chernoff, I think we kind of touched on Seattle earlier in the podcast. They're exceptionally overrated. Are they overrated in this spot?
At 6.5, certainly. And I think it comes down to your expectations of this coaching staff. There's been like a bit of a sort of shift in perception that Seattle's willing to throw the football more. But if we just look at this from a first half perspective, the last 4 weeks, their run rates only dipped from 52% to 51%, which is still the 3rd highest in the NFL. So despite having this explosive, efficient passing attack, Schottenheimer and Carroll really not putting the emphasis on that in their sort of scripted game plan early in the first half. And so when you consider the identity that they're continuing to push and how it matches up against Tampa Bay, this is far and away the number one front seven against the rush in the NFL. They've proven that against a very difficult schedule of opposing rushers. They now go into Seattle in a matchup where I think they can force the Seahawks to be quite one-dimensional. And you can't really knock anything that Russell Wilson has been doing. We've seen him just excel and perform at an unrealistic rate that's apparently sustainable for him. But it looks very different when he's facing pressure and they're not able to run the football and he has to convert 3rd and 8 and plus versus when he's consistently dealing with 3rd and short. And so I think if Tampa Bay's able to put forth another great effort from their front seven and really force Seattle to be one-dimensional, despite how that may sort of encourage the pass, it's going to encourage the pass from a very different perspective. And then it comes down to trust of the coaching staff. And the Seahawks overall, I don't think that their defense and their issues in the secondary and how big of a liability that is has really been showcased the last couple of weeks as they continue to get positive results. But you look at the 3 games this year Seattle's faced against passing attacks ranked higher than 20th in overall offensive efficiency. They've allowed 33, 29, and 30 points to be scored. Bit of a step up here with Tampa Bay at 18th. So we're looking at the Bucs coming off of a very misleading box score a week ago on the road at Tennessee in a game they absolutely should have won. This number gets a little bit inflated at 6.5. You definitely have to be looking towards Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and like Seattle actually made Matt Schaub look like an NFL quarterback next week, which is exceptionally alarming. Brad Allen, what are you leaning here? Bucs Seahawks.
They didn't make him look like an NFL quarterback. They made him look like an MVP candidate. 39 for 52 for 462 yards at 8.8 yards per attempt. That's stunningly bad to allow that. He hasn't played for like 4 years and he's got no arm strength.
I actually thought he was retired. I honestly thought he was retired. Yeah.
Last time I saw him, I made a note. I was like, bet against this guy next time I see him. And he comes out and lights them up for 462 yards. So the Seattle pass rush is abysmal, as Adam was kind of saying there. They're 30th by Pro Football Focus's pass rush grade. And then the Bucs come in here with actually the 8th ranked offensive line. So I think James should have some time to stand back there, scan the field. We know he likes to throw those deep intermediate routes. So we've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin running downfield against pretty poor Seattle secondary. So I very much agree that the Bucs are going to get their points here. And then hopefully on the other side of the ball, that the Seahawks are stupid enough to go run, pass, and then they'll find themselves in a lot of 3rd and 8. And as good as Russell is, you can't keep putting him in a situation where he's only going to convert 40% of the time, no matter how good he is. So, yeah, I like the +6 as well.
All right, a double vote for the Bucs. Drew Dinsick in agreement with the other gents?
I certainly am. I think this is a beautiful spot for Tampa Bay. I know that Tampa Bay is kind of at the very tail end of a really, really horrific stretch of travel. But this is still built-in home field advantage for Seattle that's not commensurate with what we're seeing in 2019 in the NFL anymore. And we looked ahead last week and we were expecting about a 5.5 here. It opens at 6.5, and it's like, okay, perfect. I didn't see anything from Seattle last week that gave me any indication that they're better than we think. I think that if they in any way, shape, or form think that they're going to gain anything on the ground against this stout Tampa Bay run defense, they're mistaken. This is going to be entirely commensurate on Russell Wilson to do something magical to keep up, go point for point, score for score with Jameis Winston and the Bucs, who are going to be able to throw all day on this secondary. So I would expect this looks an awful lot like the Saints and the Ravens heading up to Seattle and not being scared, putting pressure on this Seahawks team. And if the Seahawks come out with any kind of a flat game plan, any kind of an expectation of hey, we're the better team, we're at home, we always win here, then they're in deep trouble. And and the only point I would bring up that we haven't mentioned is Seattle has got San Francisco on deck next week. That's a pretty important game that they may be kind of giving a little bit of time and dedicating a little bit of their prep this week to thinking about San Francisco and how they're going to get level with them in the NFC West next week. So this is a nice spot in every way for Tampa Bay to come in and challenge. I don't know that they get a win. Maybe when we get to the who do you back on the money line for your dog money line play at Matchbook, Tampa Bay is probably the one I would lean to. I definitely like them getting 6 points.
All right, let's come back to that in a while. Adam, before I come off this one, so you were saying 6.5. So currently a matchbook, you can back plus 6.5 at 1.96. And like I said earlier, plus 6, 1.98. For that amount of difference, it's worth going to get that hook, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why everyone listening should be playing at Matchbook. Stop sending tickets from other sports books and bookmakers.
This is a really good point because
I know.
Yes, a really good point. This week. So yeah, let's kind of up the ante here small because we had a few guys. And we by the way, we love you guys getting in touch with us on Twitter on a Sunday night, especially when we have winning weeks because sometimes you get in touch with us when we have losing weeks and they're not so fun. But yeah, you're sending us screenshots of other sports books. Guys, send us a few Matchbook acas and send them on and let me see what I can do. Might be able to get a few free bets going. So yeah, you have been warned or promised, whichever. Yeah, 6.5. So we're going to lock that in, guys, at 1.96. Right, gentlemen. Let's move on to the next one. Detroit Lions at the Oakland Raiders. Oakland finally back at home. It seems like it's been about 3 months, but anyway, current betting at Matchbook. The Oakland Raiders are a favorite. A favorite. Imagine 1.77. First time in about a year they've been a favorite. Detroit Lions 2.29 the money line. Handicap is seems to be going with the Raiders at the moment. -2 is the main line of 1.9, and the total is 50. Dinsick, I backed the over here, and I backed to the 50.5. It's currently 50. You're not going to talk me out of this one, surely.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
No. I look forward to hearing any kind of opposition case here to an over because this really screams track meet to me. The matchup between the passing offense for the Lions and the Raiders secondary gives them huge opportunities to put points on the board and kind of quietly not really getting a lot of attention. John Gruden has gotten Derek Carr to really perform well. He's got his offensive line. I mean, Tom Cable. Who knew Tom Cable could actually coach an offensive line? But the offensive line for the Raiders is doing a very nice job of giving him time, giving them, getting some ground game going. I would expect that this is a nice back and forth type of a contest. We saw, a lot of points left on the field in that Houston-Oakland game last week. That really, really was a tough beat, I got to say, on that over. And I'm going back to the well on over for both of these, Oakland and Houston this week, because I think both, again, set up very well where you have effective offenses and matchups that really play to their strength. So this should be a competitive game. I would have probably backed the Oakland Raiders as a kind of if this was in the pick'em range, but at -1, -2, I think that's a pretty fair price. So I would lean Oakland, and I do love points.
Okay. I know one person who might be able to talk us out of the over here, but before I get to him, Brad Allen, you're with us on this one, surely.
Yeah, I'll back the over as well, and I'm again surprised to see it drop. So we've got 2 top 10 offenses by pretty much every metric. So I've got them 6th and 7th in adjusted net yards per pass, adjusted for opponent there. Then passing success rate, we've got Oakland 2nd, Detroit 10th, and Detroit are passing deep as well, so it's not kind of empty calories as it were. And then Oakland last week, they won the box score that against Houston, and I think it might partially be they got their right tackle back, and then they also had Tyrell Williams back there, kind of only real good wide receiver. You pair that with Darren Waller in the passing game, they've got a few weapons there, and Josh Jacobs in the backfield. And then Detroit is still a bit banged up on their back end in the secondary. Don't know about Darius Slay, looks questionable. Obviously, they've still traded away that Andre Diggs safety. So yeah, points the order of the day for me.
Adam Chernoff, there are 3 of us here that are loving the over, but you're going to make a case for caution of why there's a move on the under, obviously, and you understand, and you're thinking you understand why, but we know it's going to go over. But go on, try to talk us out about it.
No, well, usually something like this with a total where it's a very clear over, usually there's weather involved. Absolutely not the case in Northern California this week. So you got to. So it really got me looking into why, because naturally off the last week's over that I had, it was probably one to look through this week for everything said. But when you really look into it, I think game state becomes the key word, much like the Seattle-Baltimore game from a couple of weeks ago, where that was sort of a dead set over, and then we ended up seeing some movement late in the week. And I think it's moving for the same reason. We look at Oakland, they're the 5th highest run rate in a neutral game situation. So anytime the game's within 7 points, they're running it at the 5th highest rate in the NFL. But what I thought was interesting last week is John Gruden's extremely good at game planning for specifics against opponents. And with Tracy Walker and Darius Slay likely coming back, that Detroit secondary, with both of those guys healthy, grades out 12th in success rate when you sort of parse out the time that they missed for injuries. But when you look at this run defense for Detroit, 28th in that regard for the season. So if you're really putting towards the game plan, Oakland, who's become really a run-first team behind this enormous offensive line, but also Gruden, who's become very much someone who wants to run the football once he sees that he's having success running the football. The likely sort of plan of attack here for Oakland, despite their great passing numbers, is to keep the ball on the football, or keep the football on the ground. And then when you look at the Detroit Lions, they're still above average in run rate in terms of neutral game state situations. And we know Darrell Bevell, as offensive coordinator, wants to run the football. That's the base of their identity. We even saw that last week as well after Kerryon Johnson departed to the IR, still a team that wants to rush the football. But what really doesn't get talked about is Matthew Stafford under pressure. And if you parse out quarterbacks who've had at least 125 dropbacks, the only passer in the NFL with a worse passer rating than Matthew Stafford, Mitchell Trubisky. And the Oakland Raiders, while they don't rank high in pass rush grades, the energy that this team has put forth in the last couple of weeks is very interesting. 40% of snaps versus Deshaun Watson, he was under pressure. And that was a Houston offensive line that grades out a lot higher than Detroit in a number of metrics. So now you got the Lions going on the road. The situation where the Raiders are just coming out and playing a full 60 minutes, really buying into what Gruden has. If both of these teams, and it stays close, both of these teams are going to want to run the football. They're going to find success running the football. And if the Raiders can generate any sort of pass rush, that really puts a damper on this Lions passing game. So while I'm not endorsing a bet on the under, I think that that's clearly the case for why this point spread is moving, or why this total is moving down, and why this point spread is staying where it is. So I definitely see the other side to this one.
All right, it's always good to have a bit of balance here. Brad Allen, you wanted to come back in on something Adam said there.
Yeah, I'm not a huge buyer of this Raiders pass rush yet. So last week, Houston had a couple of injuries along the offensive line. So I think the replacement right tackle went down. They ended up with their right guard at right tackle. And he was just getting his lunch eaten all day. I was following that one quite closely. So I think the Detroit will be able to block that a bit better. And then Detroit's passing rate, I think, has gone up a fair bit since they lost Kerryon Johnson. And that's kind of, we were on the over in Detroit last week because they'd gone up to like 65%. Passing the ball in neutral situations, and I think they continued that last week when we poured it on. So, I agree that Oakland running the ball is probably the concern, as Adam said, but I do think Detroit will get there.
And don't forget, in the Oakland Coliseum, because November and the A's are not in the World Series, we will not have to worry about second or third base on the field, which is always a nice thing to be not concerned about. Let's move on to one of the early games on Sunday night, the Tennessee Titans at the Carolina Panthers. Current betting here, a matchbook on the money line, the Titans under Ryan Tannehill, 2.83. Carolina Panthers at 1.54. Main handicap line is 3.5. Titans obviously getting a start. You can back that at 1.97, currently a matchbook. And the total is 41.5. Adam Chernoff, Panthers disappointed in a major way last week. Titans get it done. Are you kind of buying this whole Ryan Tannehill revolution in Tennessee?
Not yet. I think he's a step up from Mariota. But I think at this number, it's a fantastic market spot just to have a number grab with Carolina, especially if you're looking at 3.5. Tennessee probably came off one of the most fraudulent, if not the most fraudulent victory of any team this entire season, outgained by nearly 1 yard per play. The yards that they allowed in the first half, it was more than double of what they actually gained. 2 of their touchdown drives in the first half combined for a total of 16 yards in gain distance. So you're looking at a team that benefited from a lot of fortunate scenarios, benefited from a very fortunate call late in the game as well. But this was 4 quarters of Tampa Bay just dominating the Titans and not ultimately coming out with the victory. You look at Carolina completely on the other side of that, 51-13. And that was a game where there was a ton of market support for Carolina going into San Francisco. So a lot of people holding Panthers tickets last weekend ended up very disappointing. You look at the Titans secondary, though, it's hard not to circle this as one of the biggest liabilities in the NFL. They're 20th in passing success rate, but that's against the 7th easiest schedule of opposing passers through the first half of the season. So that looks very different against Carolina. Not necessarily the great deep passing team we've expected to see, but very difficult to defend Carolina through the width of the field. A lot of speed there as well. And it really comes down to the Carolina pass rush on the other side of the football. We just talked about Matthew Stafford being a little bit under the radar, under pressure, and how much he struggles. How about Ryan Tannehill and his struggles? We have to parse out a little bit of the data because he has limited snaps so far. But if we're looking at passers who's had at least 60 dropbacks this season, Ryan Tannehill, in terms of his passer rating, just below Josh Rosen and just above Eli Manning and Luke Falk, who are no longer starting for NFL teams. So if the Panthers and their 7th graded pass rush can generate any pressure, this 3.5 looking awfully short on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll be honest, this wasn't a game really on my radar, but you've made a compelling case for the Panthers. Brad Allen, any lean on this one?
Wasn't really a game on my radar either. Thought about the over. Obviously, it's quite low at 41.5. And as Adam said, the Tennessee defense has been pretty poor. And Tannehill's been quite impressive, I would say. He's 14% better than league average at passing efficiency through his sort of 2.5 games. And he's ranking kind of 12th if you look at completion percentage over average. So, yeah, I don't have a play, but over might be worth a look.
Over might be a little worth a look for Brad Allen. Drew Dinsick, anything here for you?
This was one of the ones that was pretty easy to stay away from. As bad as Kyle Allen and the Panthers in general looked last week, I would have had them ripe for to continue to fade them as a favorite this week, because a lot of times when you perform that poorly and you have a young quarterback, you tend to kind of try to reel him in and give him a less aggressive game plan to try to help him build his confidence back. And I don't think that necessarily works against this Titans team. The Titans clearly have taken a step forward with having a Tannehill in there in lieu of Mariota, who is just completely ineffective passing the ball beyond 10 yards down the field. And I think Tannehill can what he does well is attack you down the sidelines in kind of the 10 to 20 yard range. And that's that's in general, that's where the Panthers secondary does a pretty decent job of kind of baiting quarterbacks into throwing passes that they then go for the opportunistic picks. So this has the potential to be kind of a high turnover kind of a game. And when I see that, I tend to stay away from either getting involved in the side or a total and just kind of let this one play out.
Brad Allen, you want to come back in there and something?
Yeah, I would just say it's worth remembering that these Panthers went off +4 basically in San Francisco. Like there was, it was floods of money for them late. So there's a lot of respect for them in the market, and it's unlikely that will just disappear after one. It was a terrible game, but it's unlikely it will disappear after just one game. So that might be the sharp side.
Adam, I'm going to back you on this one. I'm going to lock this in as an official play for us. Carolina -3.5. I like the angle. Yeah, I'm going to vote of confidence there. You've done a lot to deserve it. So, yeah. Sometimes, it's kind of weird. Like, we look at kind of games and, like, Drew wasn't overly happy with one there and Brad wasn't happy with one. And sometimes, guys, if you haven't got a lean, sometimes just don't play it. We don't actually have to bet every game on the card each week. Let's move on to a game we probably will bet, though, Prof, because it's an early game on Sunday. One of those early ones where Drew Dinsick gets out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. He loves doing that on a Sunday morning. But Drew, first of all, you're in the Breeders' Cup this week, so you definitely won't be getting out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. You probably go to bed at that time.
We're not sleeping this weekend.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's just no way. Yeah, no, there's too much to do, too much going on.
That's the way to finish a Saturday night in Santa Anita. Start watching Texans Jags, right? Let's have a look at the betting. First of all, the game of Wembley, of course, is Sunday, early kickoff. Houston, Texas, 1.9, slight favorite, 2.06 the Jags. Main handicap at the moment, 1.5, very skimpy line there, 1.96 the Jags getting the start. And the total, 46. Brad Allen. Deshaun Watson in Wembley. It's going to be something special, surely.
I like the other side. There's been money for these Jags, isn't there? They opened 3, I think, and got bet down real quick, and it's just been heading that way all week. The Texans, as I touched on earlier a little bit, are pretty banged up. I can see possibly 4 cornerbacks on the injury report, a lot of questionable. So it's not sure yet. Obviously, they did trade for a corner as well last week. So they'll have him in there, but they're still very thin at secondary. JJ Watt out. The right tackle, questionable, Francis Howard. Basically, there's a lot of injuries also. Fuller, wide receiver. So I think that's probably part of this move here. And then you look a little bit deeper at Jacksonville. Jacksonville, if you just look at adjusted yards per pass on the season again, net, then Jacksonville are up at 6th in the NFL. We're quite a long way ahead of Houston, are down at 15th by these numbers I've got here. So Jacksonville possibly going to be more efficient passing the ball. And then they also probably have the situational edge. They've won 3 of their last 4 at Wembley. And obviously, they've been over here 6, 7 years in a row now. They're probably used to this early start, used to the travel. They've probably perfected how to do that, apart from last year when they got arrested in a nightclub, which was possibly an oversight. So, yeah, I think the situation favours them here. And then, obviously, the key matchup here, as we were saying, that the Raiders were getting 40% pressure on Deshaun Watson last week, and he did struggle a little bit. Obviously, he got kicked in the eye and stuff. And the Jags D-line is much better than that Raiders D-line. So if they are still banged up, then I think the Jags will be all over him. And I think Minshew is good enough that they will get the win.
I kind of like the over here, so I think it's kind of low enough, 46. Brad, look, we always look for general angles in these Wembley games or, general London games at Tottenham though as well. But would you put much stock into the fact that the Jags have been here? What has it been every year for the last 4 years?
Yeah, I do. There is, these are, I say a lot, they're quite finely tuned athletes. Like they bring over the exact food, they bring over ketchup, they bring over pillows and stuff because they want it to be the exact same. And I think the Jags have probably worked out, right, this is when it's best to go over for sleep. This is how we transport our equipment, etc. Yeah, I think you do something 5 times, and I think you learn how to do it better. And as I said, they've won 3 of the last 4, 3 of those as underdogs. So, yeah, I do think there is a little something there. How to quantify it, nobody knows, but I think there is something.
Adam Chernoff, any play in this one for you?
Well, before I say something ridiculous, I'll need both of you to confirm, but the Wembley roof does not cover the entire field. It just covers the stands, correct?
Does Wembley have a roof? Prof?
From what I know, it's got the roof that covers the stands, but it doesn't cover the whole field.
It doesn't cover
right?
the pitch. Yeah, there's no covering the pitch.
You're probably asking the wrong guys. We're not general football / soccer fans myself and the professor, so I don't know. Probably, sorry, we should probably be able to answer that one. But yeah, it doesn't. I've never seen the roof fully closed there, Prof.
It doesn't have a closable roof.
Okay. Go for it.
If you guys ever have questions about the Calgary Stampeders CFL,
we'll be on to you. You've been first guy.
I will absolutely have that covered. Yeah. But the point being, there's obvious weather that's now carrying over onto Sunday. We're going to get wind. We're going to get rain. It's going to be potentially ugly, and we know that this is a pitch that gets pretty banged up during the game, or the field rather, switching it over between the regional preference. But so this total's come down from 47 to 46. Anytime we see wind and rain forecasted like this, it usually warrants much bigger of a move, and usually it pushes the total down towards 41, 42. The reason we haven't seen that move happen yet, I think partially because there's the roof discussion, but the other half is what Brad mentioned: Jonathan Joseph, Gibson, Roby, Lonnie Johnson, 4 defensive backs for the Houston Texans, potentially going to miss this game or be playing at much less than 100%. Gardner Minshew, despite what I think about him overall as a quarterback, one of the more efficient passers when targeting deep shots down the field of 20 yards or more. So we saw this Houston Texans secondary give up 9.5 yards per pass to the Oakland Raiders with many of the similar injuries. But we also saw them blow some terrible coverages. And Oakland didn't necessarily exploit it to the fullest extent, but matched up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the reason that this total hasn't come down all the way based on all the weather is because we're looking at one of the potentially worst cluster injuries at a position this entire season, and that's in the Houston secondary. You add in the fact that J.J. Watt won't be leading one of the more efficient run-stopping front sevens in the NFL. That looks very different against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are top 5 in explosive run rate, as well as ranking very high in terms of rushing success rate. And you look at these two teams overall, if we're going to look at any of the efficiency comparison tables, the grading tables, net yards per play, however you want to look at it, very similar to what we saw last week with Denver, Indianapolis, where the Broncos were equal or higher, and the point spread was favoring the Indianapolis Colts in that situation. Very similar spot here where the Jags and Texans in almost every category, if we're not looking at individual sort of success rate, but just overall efficiency as a team, pretty well equal with Houston in every single category that matters. So 2 teams that are really quite equal in their regard. That's why we're seeing the point spread move. Huge advantage for Jacksonville potentially on offense if these injuries hold up. I think you definitely have to look to the Jags here.
Yeah, forget what I said about the over. Don't like the over anymore. Brad, before I come to you, Brad, you want to come back in there?
I wonder if the total hasn't plummeted a little bit, because if you go on NFL weather sites, I checked it earlier today, they're still showing Jacksonville weather. So I wonder if there's a little disconnect on, okay, a couple of syndicates or whatever have looked at it and gone, yeah, it's all fine.
You never know. Northern Florida to Northern London, big difference in climate there. Drew Dinsick, anything for you on this?
Yeah, I like the over.
I love it.
Yeah, there's the old saying, if the game in Wembley is played, bet the over, you get paid. I mean, it's the Wembley, the way that they that the teams kind of step up their performance in Wembley is notable. I know that that cluster injuries is humongously. I think the Jags are going to be able to score at will against the Texans, and I think the Texans are going to be able to answer because this is an enormous step up in class for the Jaguars defense. They played the Bengals and the Jets the last couple of weeks, two of the more pathetic offenses across the NFL right now. So this is going to be a wake up call for them on defense, and I think just in general, the travel is going to is going to help kind of limit the ability that both defensive teams come out and give you a full physical performance. And when I think about the weather and the potential for a sloppy pitch and, the things getting a little messy and a little wild, I think that helps play 2-0 over here because you're going to have offenses where they're trying to, you're going to have receivers who are going to, be able to make their cuts, make their moves, and defensive players who are just going to be nowhere in the ballpark, and it's going to create additional separation. Tackling is going to be harder. Leonard Fournette's going to, run amok. Deshaun Watson is going to pick up yards at will on the ground. This is an offensive back and forth the way that I see this playing out. And 47 was where I got in on the over with a pretty favorable price. And I think this game lands in the 50s.
All right. I'm back on the over bandwagon. Love it. Prof. So, look, what way do you want to play this? So you got the Jags plus 1.5. You taking them on the money line?
Money line for me.
Money line for the Prof. Right. Let's move on to one of my new favorite sections. Every dog has its day. Let's do our 10-pound mythical money line. Underdog. I don't think any of ours won last week, guys. But look, that's where we get our money back, so it's fine. No loss to us. The 10-pound mythical free bet. Drew Dinsick, give me someone somewhere that's going to cause a shock this weekend.
Yeah, I legitimately think Tampa Bay gets a win in Seattle. That's a great one. But we already talked about that one, so I'll go a little bit different direction and say do not. Okay, or at least I'll get your guys' take on this. I do not think you can make a case for the New York Giants and them being kind of a side in any way, shape, or form. If anyone has a disagreement there, I would love to hear it.
This is going to be my pick. The Giants 3.88. Sorry. At home, okay. The Cowboys, I'm not backing them 1.32 with stolen money. Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I can't disagree with either of those. Am I allowed to pick the Buccaneers, or is that already taken?
Can.
All right, well, then I would go with the Bucs.
Brad Allen?
Give me the Ravens. Let's end this embarrassing New England streak of beating absolute knockouts.
Yeah, those pesky Patriots coming from nowhere. Right, we covered 5 games there, gentlemen. Drew, you normally have 1 or 2 extra ones that we may not have covered. Obviously, we only have so much time. Anything else on the docket this week for you? You can give us a few selections from Santa Anita as well, if you like.
Dude.
That's an easy game. Breeders' Cup's always easy one to make money out of.
Dude, if you're betting the Breeders' Cup, if you're betting the horses, and you think it's a standard horse race, and these are the best of the best, and the chalk, throw those conceptions out the window. Look for the long shots. Put together some exotics that give just outrageous paydays, because these are the biggest pools and the biggest. We usually see some just total shockers at the Breeders' Cup. For the Thursday night game, I laid the chalk. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback for Arizona. I think they underperformed significantly against truly one of the better defenses in the league in San Francisco. So I laid the 9.5 points on the Niners. I backed. We talked about my 3 totals over in Houston, over in Oakland. Going back to that, try to get that win we should have got last week. But now I'm looking for 2 of them. And then under in New England, Tampa Bay is on my card. I'm on Dallas. I think Dallas laying the points is fine. I really don't have any problem at all laying the points against the Giants. I think this Giants team is wildly fraudulent in every sense of the word. I know Adam had them last week and they got him a cover, but that was pretty fortuitous backdoor with the Lions taking their foot off the gas. I don't think you see it with Dallas. I don't think Dallas is taking their foot off the gas in this one. They're on prime time. They're trying to make a statement. They're out there. They're out there in the market, mixing it up, trying to steal Jamal Adams from the Jets, trying to heist a couple of players here at the trade deadline. Didn't work out for them, but I think they know that blood is in the water with the Giants, and they're going to embarrass this team on Monday.
Prof, anything else for you on this week's slate?
Giants and over in that one. You've got the NFL's #1 ranked offense by success rate going against the Giants defense, which is just bottom 5 by every single metric you look at, and I just think they're going to obliterate them. So I like that one. Anything else? I quite like Miami. I mean, they've looked quite frisky with Fitz there, haven't they? And the Jets' offensive line is absolutely abysmal. So Miami +3, I think, could be a little bit fruity.
They were my underdog last week. I had a good sweat off them for the first half hour, the first half.
Adam
Chernoff, anything else for you, or we send the people to insights.matchbook.com this week?
Well, we'll definitely send them there for something that'll be up. Well, if you're watching this video, it'll be up. But I think the Dolphins-Jets, if you can find a 40 at a reasonable price and anything better than 41 on the over,
okay.
I think that one's worth a look.
Interesting. Just to double back to the mythical £10 risk-free bet, you can actually get that now as a new customer on Matchbook if you sign up, and you can check that out at offer.matchbook.com. To be 18 or over does not apply to ACCAs, and gamble responsibly at all times. Right, gentlemen, let's stay in the quad box for best bets of the week. The fun time. This is where the people send us their sportsbook bet slips, but we shall not be accepting those anymore because you will get a pretty good price, I would suggest, on our ACCA at Matchbook this week. Right, let's go sharply, quickly around the square. Adam Chernoff, best bet of the week for you, sir.
Tampa Bay +6.5.
Brad Allen.
Ravens +3.5.
Drew Dinsick.
One we haven't talked about to this point, Indianapolis Colts, -1. Better team, better coach, better quarterback. Beaten teams with class. Can't say the same about Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I very much like that one. But my best bet, and I'm going to steal it off you, Drew Dinsick, is over 50 in that Oakland and Detroit game. Points, plenty of points in the Oakland Coliseum. Let's tot it up, gentlemen. Yeah, you're looking with a 4-timer at the moment. We have to give up a bit of juice for the Prof's one here, though, +3.5. But Prof, we'll do anything for you, my friend, anything, just to get you that hook. We always want to get you that hook.
Me, Sully.
So, we're probably looking at about 12.0, which is 11-1 in fractional terms at the moment. At the time of recording, obviously these prices fluctuate. You probably get a better price even closer to kickoff. And don't forget, if these win, tag us on Twitter with the Matchbook ones. Don't be sending us the Sportsbook ones anymore. Anyway, I've done enough. And we will look after you. We'll try to get you a couple of free bets. I'll have a word with the professor there. Professor, you can kind of pull your muscles. Matchbook top brass.
I'll have a word, Sully.
Can
I just point out that we were getting grief from someone who placed like a 6 or a 7-fold. We hit 5 out of 7, and he's going, "Oh, my ACCA's gone down." Well, just put signals on you, fruitcake. Come on.
Yeah. Or round robin.
It's tough going, all right, when we're getting grief for that one pick. Look, I mean, guys, this is like, in all honesty, hitting a treble, hitting a quad is a good weekend for any of us. Let's be honest, and I always try to keep it in the green. But I think good shout out there, Prof. Very good shout out.
I'm not having it.
Dead right. Right, that is it. We are out of here. We are done for another week. Enjoy the game at Wembley on Sunday. Early kickoff. Drew Dinsick, you'll be back in Santa Anita, back in the Ponies, so we won't have to do a podcast for that, just back outsiders. Prof, hopefully you'll be at Wembley. Adam Chernoff, next couple of weeks, you're going to your first Jets game. Love it.
Now, finally happening.
There you go. Tickets are cheap for the Jets right now. Good time to go.
Yeah.
Please have a word with management. Have a word with management and ask them to get rid of Gase. Enough is.
He's got to go.
You got to get rid of them. Have a word with the management when you're
take him with you if you can. Take him back to Canada. Get him somewhere. CFL would be a really good spot for him. Like, what are the name of the team in Calgary?
The Stampeders. He'd look nice in red and black.
He'd love it. He gets one less down to mess up an offense as well. Like, so right. That's it. We're out of here. We could be here all day talking about Adam Gase, but we would not do that to anyone. Enjoy week 9. Don't forget, if you're enjoying the podcast, you're watching us elsewhere, subscribe to us on YouTube and try to give us a 5-star rating if you're enjoying it. And don't forget those matchbook ACCA slips. Enjoy.